Lewis Hamilton is beginning to question Ferrari's decisions publicly, and Charles Leclerc is finding it increasingly difficult to hide his frustration. The Hungarian Grand Prix should have been one of Ferrari's best opportunities to win. The SF26 controlled Friday practice, Hamilton led a Ferrari 1-2 in FP2, and even Toto Wolff admitted the British driver looked like the leading candidate for victory. But when all the points had been awarded, Ferrari left with only 4th and 5th. This was not the result of one isolated incident. Ferrari failed to maximise qualifying, lost positions on the opening lap, struggled on the hard tyre, repeatedly released its cars into traffic, and then made a strategic decision that sacrificed Hamilton's track position. After the race, even Frédéric Vasseur made no attempt to protect his team. "We made too many mistakes and took too many wrong decisions," he admitted. Hamilton also made his disagreement unmistakably clear. The instruction to make his final pit stop arrived only moments before the pit entry, leaving him no time to discuss it. "I definitely don't think we should have made that stop," Hamilton said. He believed his tyres were still in reasonable condition and that he had at least retained a chance of defending a podium position. Leclerc approached the problem from a different direction. He said Ferrari weren't particularly sharp and described the SF26's performance as deeply inconsistent from one stint to another. So when one driver starts questioning the pit wall and the other complains about a car that is becoming increasingly difficult to understand, the problem is no longer limited to one strategy call in Hungary. Hamilton is still accepting responsibility for his own mistakes, but that does not change the fact that his criticism of Ferrari is becoming more specific and more public. Was Hungary simply a bad weekend, or the first sign that both Ferrari drivers are beginning to lose patience? Subscribe if you enjoy this kind of Formula One analysis, because to answer that, we need to examine every decision that is now increasing the pressure inside Ferrari. The most important point is that Ferrari did not arrive in Hungary hoping merely to limit the damage. It arrived believing the Hungaroring could expose the strengths of the SF26. After winning at Silverstone and finishing second at Spa, Ferrari moved to a circuit that appeared even more suitable on paper. Its car was regarded as particularly effective through the corners, and the limited number of long straights reduced the influence of an engine package that was still considered a relative weakness against Mercedes. Friday appeared to confirm that assessment. Leclerc topped FP1 before Hamilton led a commanding Ferrari 1-2 in FP2. The margin to the chasing group was approximately 0.4 of a second. This was not a case of Ferrari manufacturing optimism from an isolated sector or a heavily adjusted fuel estimate. Its performance was strong enough for Wolff to believe Hamilton looked like the likely winner. But the first serious warning arrived in qualifying. Hamilton held provisional pole after the opening runs in Q3. Ferrari then sent both cars out early for their final attempts, and neither driver improved. Norris took pole for McLaren, while Hamilton's original second place was converted into 5th on the grid by a 3-place penalty for impeding Oscar Piastri. Whether that incident was primarily a driver oversight or the result of insufficient warning from the pit wall, it damaged Ferrari before the race had even started. It also forced Leclerc to use a new set of soft tyres he had hoped to preserve for Sunday, reducing the team's strategic flexibility. Then came the start. Leclerc suffered slight wheel spin and was not aggressive enough into turn 1. By the end of the opening lap, Piastri led Norris and Verstappen, with Hamilton 4th and Leclerc 5th. Ferrari's apparent Friday advantage had already become dependent on recovering positions at a circuit where overtaking remained extremely difficult. Hamilton applied pressure to Verstappen during the opening stint but could not pass. Ferrari responded with an early stop and successfully used the undercut to place Hamilton ahead of the Red Bull. That part of the operation worked. What followed did not. Verstappen attacked at turn 1 and passed Hamilton and Liam Lawson in the same move. Hamilton immediately admitted over the radio that he had not seen the Red Bull coming. He later apologised to race engineer Carlo Santi for surrendering the position. Verstappen's explanation was direct. "I realised that Hamilton wasn't paying attention and I attacked," he said. "It was my only opportunity to regain the position and I took it." Hamilton had been caught out, although there may also have been a technical element to his vulnerability. Anthony Davidson suggested that Hamilton had used additional battery energy while passing Lawson at the end of the previous lap. That could have left the Ferrari with less electrical deployment when Verstappen arrived at the end of the straight. But whatever the combination of factors, the consequence was damaging. Ferrari had spent strategic capital to gain track position and then lost it almost immediately on the circuit. Verstappen subsequently complained that Hamilton had moved under braking, yet the stewards did not intervene, and Martin Brundle was unconvinced that the Ferrari driver had done anything wrong. Both cars were moving towards the apex. Contact was avoided and sufficient space remained. The significance of the moment was therefore not a possible penalty. It was Ferrari's inability to convert a successful undercut into a lasting advantage. That inability exposed the central weakness of its afternoon. The SF26 had been effective on the C5 soft, but struggled badly on the C3 hard. Hamilton and Leclerc could produce competitive pace at the beginning of the race and again during the final stint on softs. On the hard, their performance became much less convincing. Pirelli's assessment supported that conclusion. Motorsport director Dario Marafusci said Ferrari had shown particular effectiveness on the soft, while Mercedes had focused successfully on the hard. The contrast was visible when Antonelli managed to keep Hamilton behind, despite the Ferrari running on the softer and theoretically faster compound late in the race. Ferrari's high downforce configuration made matters worse. It helped the SF26 through the corners, but increased drag, leaving both drivers short of straight-line performance when they encountered traffic. Every lost position therefore became more difficult to recover. When there is only one genuine overtaking opportunity, everyone saves their energy for that section, Vasseur explained. If you are even slightly slower on the straight, you cannot overtake. That is why clean air became so important. Ferrari may have possessed competitive underlying pace, but once Hamilton and Leclerc were placed behind other cars, the theoretical performance of the SF26 became far less relevant. Vasseur believed Ferrari was quicker than Verstappen and even Piastri during parts of the first stint. He also believed Leclerc had the pace to remain close to the McLarens, but Ferrari never established the track position required to prove it. Each stop then became a reaction to the previous setback. Time lost behind Verstappen pushed Ferrari towards earlier pit windows. Those stops returned its cars to traffic. The traffic restricted their pace, and the weakness on the hard compound prevented them from creating another strategic route back towards the podium. Ferrari eventually used the late virtual safety car, triggered after Piastri stopped on the circuit following his incident with Carlos Sainz, to return both cars to soft tyres. The improvement was immediate, particularly for Leclerc. But by then, Ferrari was attempting to repair a race that had already moved beyond its control. Hamilton's final stop became the most controversial decision because of what it cost and how little time he was given to challenge it. Before the virtual safety car, Hamilton's margin over Antonelli was just under 12 seconds. Ferrari needed an excellent stop and a perfect pit exit to keep its driver ahead. The stop itself took approximately 2.9 seconds, leaving Hamilton in a direct fight with the Mercedes towards the relevant timing line. Hamilton released his pit lane speed limiter slightly too early. The limit was 80 km per hour, with the FIA tolerance extending to 80.5. Hamilton reached 80.6. The speed limiter was disengaged too early, Vasseur confirmed. When the weekend is going in the wrong direction, 0.1 becomes a huge difference. Hamilton initially emerged alongside Antonelli but was judged to be behind at the safety car line and had to return the position. He then asked Santi whether everything connected to the stop had been handled correctly. Ferrari initially reassured him that there was no issue. Only later was he informed of the 5-second penalty. Hamilton crossed the finish line fourth, 4.3 seconds ahead of Leclerc. The penalty reversed their order, placing Leclerc fourth and Hamilton fifth by a margin of 0.7 seconds. Martin Brundle accepted that the punishment appeared harsh for such a small excess, but supported enforcing a strict limit, provided the FIA measurement was accurate. His qualification was significant after Monaco, where differences in how the pit lane distance had been calculated contributed to controversial penalties. For Hamilton, however, the wider issue was that the infringement would never have occurred without a pit stop he believed was unnecessary. "I'm absolutely convinced that we shouldn't have made that final tyre change," he said. "The decision literally came just before the pit lane entry and I didn't have time to discuss it." Hamilton believed his tyres were still good enough to continue. He accepted Verstappen might have passed him, but thought third place could still have been defended against Antonelli. Ferrari's own post-race assessment did little to weaken Hamilton's argument. Vasseur admitted the best sequence was probably soft, hard, rather than the strategy Ferrari actually used. The team had lacked complete long-run information on all three compounds, taken strategic risks and been proved wrong by how far Verstappen managed to extend his soft stint. "I think starting on the soft was a good decision," Vasseur said. "The best strategy was probably soft and hard, not the one we adopted. That admission matters." Hamilton was not simply criticising a decision because the outcome had been disappointing. Ferrari's team principal also accepted that its tyre sequence had not been the best available. Yet Hamilton's position is more complicated than that of a driver preparing to turn against his team. He repeatedly accepted responsibility for his own errors. "Silverstone was my fault. Belgium was my fault, and today was also my fault, so I have nothing to blame the team for," he said. He also issued a severe warning about the consequences. "These are the mistakes that can make you lose championships. If I continue like this, I won't win anything anymore." That self-criticism makes his disagreement with Ferrari more credible, not less. Hamilton is not attempting to transfer every failure onto the pit wall. He is separating his own mistakes from decisions he believes the team got wrong. Leclerc's frustration has a different target. His concern is not one isolated pit call, but Ferrari's inability to explain the behaviour of its own car. "Today we paid a heavy price for a poor start, but at the same time we weren't particularly sharp," Leclerc said. "There were too many ups and downs, and I think that's exactly what we need to work on." He described the situation as strange and disconnected. Two sets of the same compound could produce completely different sensations, leaving neither driver nor team with a stable performance reference. That creates the real source of internal pressure. Hamilton needs Ferrari to make clearer strategic decisions. Leclerc needs Ferrari to understand why the SF26 changes so dramatically between stints. Vasseur needs both drivers to eliminate mistakes while his operational team delivers cleaner weekends. There is no evidence of an open split at Ferrari. But there is clear evidence of increasingly public disagreement, technical uncertainty, and opportunities being lost through execution. Ferrari had the car to achieve much more in Hungary. Instead, it turned Friday dominance into fourth and fifth, while its drivers left Budapest questioning different parts of the same operation. So how many more races can Ferrari waste before Hamilton and Leclerc stop describing these failures as problems to solve and begin treating them as reasons to lose faith in the team? Tell us whether Ferrari's internal pressure is now becoming a genuine crisis in the comments below.